Let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining, fetishism, and everything in its orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today we're welcoming back to the show one of our favorite guests, Chromie.
Hi.
Hey, Chromie baby, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's such a pleasure to have you back. We really enjoyed having you here with us last time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my interview last time, so I'm excited to be back.
Oh, fabulous. Well, listen, we kind of kicked off with some sexy talk last time. Well, it's a bit sexy. It was BDSM, you know. But this time around, we decided we were really going to hit the ground rolling because we're fat. We don't run. So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about sex work. Post-production James to put in some sexy background music there. Yeah. So, kicking things off, how do you define sex work?
I think it's sort of a difficult thing to define, but in general, just anything that involves the exchanging of something sexual for money. I think a lot of the definition has to come from like the social stigma of it. So I would classify anything that you could like get in trouble potentially with your job or like family and friends finding out if you did it, whether they would consider it sex work.
Interesting. I don't disagree, actually, because I think when I ask that question, in my mind, I'm immediately thinking about like the predominance of gaming and fetus porn that now exists online and how so many people have a Just for Fans, an OnlyFans, a Patreon,
Exactly.
Pay My Coffee, you know, and then you've got people out on the street putting themselves sometimes in physical danger to make coin. You know, I think sometimes there's that question, like weighing the two up, like, are they really in the same category? But I think you're right. I think any instance where you are gaining income because of a proclivity that steps outside of, I guess, normative sex without that kind of transactionary nature kind of comes under that for itself.
Yeah, I think even like sugar babies that's a form of sex work. Like, I don't know if there's, you know, if we're going to get into like the different levels of danger behind it, that's a whole different conversation. But just the broader umbrella of sex work, I think, includes many, many things, including, I mean, I think being even like an artist who draws sexy drawings, like that's a less stigmatized form, but I think that's also sex work.
I never considered that before. I mean, we all know that I would like to be a sex worker, but I'm really just a slut because I give it away for free. I have an OnlyFans. I don't charge any money for it. And all these years, you know, I was just sort of, you know, giving out sexual favors as a form of courtesy. So I'm not the best example of how to make any money off of it.
It's very fancy of you. Some people have sex, you know, as a sort of a king marrying off his daughter, like, oh, our family lines will unite and the countries will merge and our kingdoms will be stronger. And then you give sex like a thank you note, like, oh.
See, in that scenario, I wouldn't be anyone eligible for marriage. I would just be sort of like the court slut that like, you know, like when, especially if it's, you know, little gay, you know, young gay man or whatever, like, the king would be like, okay, you haven't had sex yet, you're 18 now, go have sex with the court slut and then we'll marry you off. Just so you can gain some experience. Like, I'm the one who's like in the dungeon, you know, with all the accoutrements hanging around, like, so finally made your way down here, have you? You've heard stories about me, haven't you?
Oh Lord. See, ladies and gentlemen, what you don't realize is Tim is so old. He's not telling you a story. He's just telling you what he was doing in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, that was, you know, I had to make ends meet somehow. Was living at His Majesty's leisure, so.
Beautiful stuff. I mean, I think it's a good conversation to have about like what we define as sex work and the sort of narratives around it, because there is still a lot of stigma around, you know, doing anything sex adjacent and receiving income off it. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've told my sugar daddy story on the podcast before. Like at the start, I think it was. But for any new listeners, I will give you the cliff notes. Essentially, there was a man who gave me about $3,000 over the course of 6 months. But it turns out it wasn't his money to give, and so that was
Still, I
Oh
mean, if I had
no.
known, if I had really understood what I could have done with my young, nubile gay body, God, I was an idiot. I could have been making so much bank, and here I was just giving it away.
lessons learned. Lessons learned.
You couldn't pay for it now. Now I'm that dried up old husk of a. I'm the cow that gives powdered milk.
Oh my goodness. I see Robin Williams as Mrs. Doubtfire, and what's that line? Why buy the cow when you can have the milk for free? And Robin Williams was talking about Tim, because even Robin Williams at the room's about Tim. Oh my goodness. But I think this is a great place to start the episode, is yes, with a giggle, but also with an understanding of consent and with the importance of respecting sex work, because I think we've even stumbled into this with the conversation on sex work in the past with the podcast, where sometimes there is a perceived judgment, sometimes there is a glance askance, where it's just
absolutely,
because something,
even when I was like, let's say 21, and I was going out to the gay bars all the time, we knew the guys that did internet porn. We're like, oh, he's through this company, he's through that company, he appears on this website. And there was that kind of looking askance at it, like, oh, well, he's an escort or he's a whatever.
I would argue then that sex work does include the content that we currently see being produced in the community by gayness and fetists.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
While the advent of sex work is relatively new to our communities, it seems to be a lot more established in the fetist community. At least that's my perception looking in. I feel like it's only really emerged in the gay scene within the last 3 to 4 years. But I feel like prior to that point, I was seeing a lot of it being spoken about through Tumblr, through those kinds of forums, like a lot of people generating stuff maybe through clips for sales. At the time, I don't think OnlyFans was much of a thing at the time, but that's my observation, that it's been more established in the fetus community. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if I know enough about the gay community to say. I would disagree with you that there hasn't been gainer content for maybe not gainer content specifically, but definitely super chub, because I remember seeing like Hansi's Super Chub back in like
I was just gonna say that.
It was probably like 2011 maybe.
Oh, it goes all the way back to 2002.
Oh, I'm sure that was just like when I was I was 13 in 2011. But yeah, I mean, Clips for Sale Ivy Davenport has been on Clips for Sale for forever. She's a woman though, so I really don't know about she was one of the first fetism models, I think, but I don't really know about
like the history
versus, I don't really know.
Well, listeners, if anyone out there is an aficionado, a savant, shall we say, with their knowledge and history of gaining and fetist sex work content, you can please email us a timeline at thiccradio@gmail.com. But, I think certainly there's been a shift within the last couple of years in the gainer side of things, because I think for a long time you saw, like, Hansi's Super Chubs, it was kind of, that was it. People wouldn't really make their own content because, much like Tim would do, people would just kind of make their own stuff and then share it amongst each other.
Yeah.
I did that for a long time, was sort of, didn't really matter whether it was belly or nudes or other things, like we just kind of shared it amongst each other. And then there really did seem to be this moment where everyone decided, okay, now I'm going to start selling this. And that was a real conversation at the time. And I think it's died down a lot now, but at the time, oh boy, that was real.
Oh yeah, it had a very short craze of like suddenly every gainer was starting an OnlyFans or a Patreon, and prior to all of that, the only people in the gainer community that I can remember were consistently selling product, and probably from around 2010 forward, were people like Lardville, Lose My Breath.
He's been around for forever.
A couple of other people that like were just dedicated, and I don't know how much of that made up their total income. I don't know if they worked regular jobs and then just did this on the side, because now we've reached a point where if you are popular enough, if people like your content enough, and if you're charging the right amount of money per month, you can live solely off of what you make on these, be it your OnlyFans or your Patreon.
But then when you consider, like, I guess the sort of chagrin that people might feel when it comes to that, if we consider that what gainers are producing now can be considered legitimate sex work, like, that is the purpose of sex work. It is work that you do, which is sex, to pay. And is there really objectively anything wrong with that? No, because it's the world's oldest profession.
Mm-hmm.
And there are plenty of people who find their way into sex work out of necessity, out of circumstance. We have the privilege of accessing sex work based on kink and fetish. So I think there's certainly an element of maybe us needing to take a step back to maybe appreciate the grander scheme of sex work and realize our place within that. Because I think there's certainly been a spat as well of straight men, ex-bodybuilder types who found their way into gaining and fetism porn, who, create content basically bloating and stipulating that they're gaining so much weight, and then they cut, lose all the weight, and get all the sort of accolades from fans again, and then rinse, repeat. I mean, isn't that why Fit to Fat to Fit came back?
Oh, were you talking about PJ, the bodybuilder that did the documentary?
No, because he only did it the once. Then there was
Drew. He only did it one time. There was Drew Manning. He did it twice.
Yeah, he was Fit to Fat to Fit. He did it twice. Yeah, I know he came back and did it a second time, but I was like, isn't that the reason why he did it, though? Because, like, he made so much money the first time, basically got money from gainers as he got fatter, and then got money from fitness bloggers and dietitians as he lost the weight. So it's just interesting that, is it playing the field? Is it inappropriate to do when people are producing a narrative? You know what I mean? Because if sex work in pornography, Jesus, James, can't with my words tonight.
Pornography.
Porn, the porn.
The pornography.
The porn's a graphy. You know what the kids are watching these days. The porn's a graphy. No, so if what we produce a lot of with gainer porn content is fantasy, is there objectively anything wrong with people outside the community making money from members of the community by producing content that we would enjoy? Chromie, what's your opinion on that?
I have a very complicated feelings about this. I think that there is sort of a two-sided coin. On one hand, it's difficult to say, because on one hand, I can say that the amount of content available for, like, me personally to get off of has increased objectively. There's more, which could be a good thing. But on the other hand, I've found that I very rarely honestly pay for porn. I generally find that the stuff that is available for free, I like more, like a lot more. So I would and there's much less of that now. And I would say that personally, I think that a lot of the quality has degraded, because my personal favorite stuff is still stuff that was recorded in, like, I don't know, 2014 on, like, an iPhone 5. And it was before, I don't know if it was before OnlyFans existed, but it was before it was really a thing. But I don't know, it's also made it so that a lot of, this lifestyle is very expensive. So I make money off of it. I think it's stupid not to. Like, I have an open way of people literally ask you if you're going to, like, people want to give you money. Why would you tell them no? Is my opinion on it. But I do have sort of complicated feelings on people outside the community doing it, because I do think, first of all, the content is never as good, I think, which is a shame. And I think it does sort of take money away from people who are into it, which is a shame. My only moral objection, because for the most part, I am a sort of a get that coin, sis kind of girl. My only moral objection is when thin women there's something icky that gets to me when, like, the thin women start acting like they're going to gain a bunch of weight and implement fat shaming in their vernacular. And I don't know, it feels very fat phobic to me, and it feels fat phobic in a way that I don't feel like it's their right to do it. So I have sort of complicated feelings about that. And just the general, just in general, pretty privilege emanates just as much in fetism spaces as it does in other spaces.
And I completely agree with you there, because there was a particular person who came into, you know, the sort of gainer just for fans, OnlyFans sphere, who was, you know, like a Z-list celebrity, you know, who had appeared on one reality show, and decides that, oh, you know, he's going to start getting attention if he puts on some weight. Probably had put on like 10 pounds from lockdown, but realized he could get attention off of it and started doing more of it. And then we found out that a member from the community reached out to this individual and said, look, I have concerns about what you're doing because you're taking space away from other people. You're not really into this. This is not your thing. Can you please stop doing this? That person who had been on the reality show and was doing all this shit literally said to a member of the community, all of you disgust me. I'm just doing this for money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, okay, that's the kind of person that has no business being here, because it's all a lie. It's all fake. I actually paid for that person's subscription for a month. It was horrible. There was nothing on there that I could get off to. There was nothing on there that was interesting. There was nothing on there that this person hadn't put out for free anyway. So it's like, what is the point?
I almost look at it as a little bit akin to how queerness is now beginning to suffer from capitalism, because capitalism has finally begun to acknowledge that queer people have money.
100%.
Because we're not spending it on children and children's shit things, we can spend it on anything. So now you have this meme of like, hi gay, happy Pride Month. Do you want to sashay away with some deals, sis? Spill the tea, hunty, and bullshit of such nature. I think it's the same thing with sex work and with capitalism. I think people are finally starting to tune into the fact like, oh, we all have access now. Nothing's stopping me from doing it. And arguably, back in the day when you kind of had to fight through the fire to do good sex work and produce good content, you don't have to do that anymore. Any Joe Blow can set up an OnlyFans and say, well, this is my sex content. You should pay me money because I think my average whatever is worth that. And morally speaking, we shouldn't think that anyone is not deserving of money for sex, because all bodies are equal, right? All people are equal. Everyone should deserve that. But there's certainly a sense of approach. Like the whole OnlyFans drama where it was going to shut down porn content anyways, didn't that come about because of Bella Thorne and like the fake out situation?
Yes. Yeah.
Which, for anyone who is unaware of this, Bella Thorne basically said, hey, if I get to 1 million subscribers, I'm going to put my nudes up on OnlyFans, and then got up to 1 million subscribers, and then proceeded to not post nudes, and then came up with a story about how I didn't actually meant nude photography. If you look in the background, there's a pot of noodles or something stupid like that. And then the amount of people who like, because on OnlyFans, you can not only cancel your subscription, but ask for your money back. The amount of people who asked for money back was so great that it nearly like shut down OnlyFans.
Yeah, people weren't getting their payouts. It was like people who rely on that money were not getting their money.
It's a huge fucking deal. So, you know, there is a sense of respect for industry that should probably be considered by people who produce content. All of that said, I don't necessarily feel like anyone listening to this podcast or anyone within the gaining and fetus communities is such a mover and shaker that should they begin to fuck with people and their money, that it would cause such ramifications. But it is good for us to be aware of the colloquial and cultural movements happening within sex work. So I think that's quite important.
And I think that sort of died down a little bit. I think for a little while in the fetism community, at least, there were every once in a while you'll get like a viral article that goes about some person who made like a bunch of money, and you know, all she does is sit around and eat all day, and she makes $50,000 a day. And you know, it goes viral, and a bunch of people join and think that it's really easy to do. And some of them are really attractive, and it actually works for, and then most of the rest of them are just sort of oversaturating the market, for lack of a better word. So in the very beginning of like the concept of online sex work, I think when that was getting big, I feel like there were a bunch of things that went viral about fetism specifically, and for a while I remember it being a real problem. And maybe it was just an adjustment period where we were getting used to having to pay for content. That could also be the case. But
We
I
did.
remember it being a problem and then it being kind of less of a problem as it became more difficult to make money because there were more people trying to make money.
Yeah, there's definitely a push-pull that happens, and maybe there's an economist listening who could tell us about the waves of business and economic discourse. Again, reach out to us at thiccradio@gmail.com and we'll have you on the podcast to talk.
Please tell me about the elitism porn economy. I want to know.
Yeah, please, please. We want to know. Give us the dollar signs. And on like instead of like the president's head on the back of the coin, it's like a little piggy.
I love that.
That'd be kind of cute. But we've kind of talked about the gainer economy before and how, genuinely speaking, it is, I think, important that we preference gainers, like actual gainers, and give our money to actual gainers because they want the money to get fat. Right? People outside of the community don't want the money to get fat. They want the money to have more money. Right? And if you give your money to a gainer to help them get more fat, and that allows them to have more freedom of financial operation for themselves, that allows them to get even bigger still. And then who knows, maybe they reach a point where they've decided they've done growing and then they can give money. Like, that's kind of how it all works. It's kind of got to loop through. So we should do more to like support each other, you know, just to help each other out, because that was the whole point of doing it in the first place. I'm going to ask a question. I think we'll have an obvious answer. Chromie, do you consider yourself a sex worker?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am. What led you to the decision to begin creating sex content?
I am someone who was on these internet spaces way too early. And kind of always thought that like as soon as I turned 18, I would start posting content. And I did. And you know, I'm a little businesswoman, so I very quickly figured out what I said before about, you know, people were actively asking to give me money. So what am I, an idiot? Like I'm not gonna say no. You know, I'm 19 years old and could use some money. So that's kind of how it started. It wasn't anything, you know, food costs money. If you want to make content, you need the money to make, you know, so it was sort of a natural progression of down that road.
I love that. And it's good to know your motivations, because I think sometimes there's that question of like, why do people do what they do? And it's good to kind of get to know the behind the scenes a little bit. And sometimes I do think that people want to know about the behind the scenes a bit too much. Like people sometimes I think are very like, what are you up to today? Like, tell me about your work, tell me about this, that, the other. And it's a bit like, please stop. Like, yeah. I show you as much as I'm comfortable with. You don't need to know. It's like, I have a partner, and sometimes people are like, you don't talk about your partner. And I'm like, correct. He is not a gainer or a feeder or a part of the community. And while he is chubby and delicious to look at, he doesn't consent to people having all this whoop-de-woo around him within the community. So therefore, we get a nice line drawn about all of that. And, you know, if you're my friend in real life, of course it's natural to ask questions. But if you're just like messaging me out of the blue because you caught a corner of your eye, you saw him around the screen, and you happen to see a love handle, and you realize he's thick and delicious, and then the first message you ever sent to me is like, tell me everything about your boyfriend, literally fuck off and choke.
Have people done that before?
Yes, they have.
Oh,
that doesn't surprise me at all, but is disgusting.
The amount of times people's first message to me is like, oh, your friend is really hot, and I'm like,
oh God,
I know what you're saying is not meant to be offensive, but I'm sat there like I'm Winifred Sanderson, like twist the bones and bend the back, but I'm not turning into a cat. I just want you dead. Like, go away with your bullshit. Oh my God. PSA, if you're going to send a message to someone, please make sure it's about them, and please make sure it's positive, because this happens far too often and it's kind of stupid.
I didn't know that was a thing. No one has ever messaged me asking me about Matt, ever.
But then does Matt show up in the background of photos? Has Matt like...
Not usually, no.
No. So it's just in those few moments, like back when I was doing a lot of live streams, you know, I'm on the camera, walk around, and, you know, Tom's just standing there shirtless, eating whatever. And then someone's like, oh, fat boy. Like, yeah, sure, cool. I get it. He's hot. I know. He's mine. But yeah, that's just a little PSA. Please rethink your intro message to someone. Make sure it's about them, and make sure it's positive. Yeah,
and make sure it has a thesis statement.
Yeah, don't just go, hi.
Sup? What you doing?
5 paragraph essay model, please.
Yeah, if you want to talk to me, submit your thesis statement. I want no less than 500 words on.
I just want to know what you want. Why did you message me?
Yes, who are you and what is this?
What do you want?
Just, I just think of like this like old woman with a cigarette, like, what do you want? We got a lot going on here. What do you want? You're bothering me. I'm having my third cigarette of the day. I'm waiting on my fourth coffee. Come on now. Oh my goodness. So I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, this idea that like there's this oversaturation that comes through and it's kind of leveled out now. How do you feel that's affected the quality of content, especially from like the fetus perspective? Do you feel like content quality is on the rise, or do you feel like it's maybe decreasing or it's leveled out? Where do you feel like it sits?
I think we definitely like objectively have the highest quality content that we have ever had. Just because of like there are certain models who have Moki Baby. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but her content, her feeder is like an actual videographer, like that's what he does. And
Dang.
his content is like professional pornography, like a movie that you would see in the theater quality. Like it's truly marvelous to look at, really hot. Like everyone go buy Moki 8 Baby's OnlyFans. Um, but so we definitely have like some of the highest quality content, not some of the highest quality content we've ever had. Um, but I feel like also it's gotten harder to find like more niche stuff. Um, like it's very easy to find just like your basic run of the mill feeding video, but maybe it's harder to find like certain things that you want. Like my thing is like very much the masochism sort of thing, and that's definitely harder to find because very few people are willing to do it. And you know, the commerciality of it has gone up, so the sort of realness of it has sort of gone down. So I guess it depends on kind of what camp you're in, what you like. But the film quality of some of the stuff, that some of the more like that's probably what they're doing for the majority of their money people, is some of it is really 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 impressive.
Mm. I do feel like that's one thing that, you know, and maybe we kind of joked about this on a live stream once, but something I do want to see more out of gaining content is like production value, you know,
Yeah.
little things like if you are going to take a little video of you in the bathroom, please put down the toilet seat lid, you know, if you,
Give some time and attention to your environment.
yeah, if there is a reflective surface, please clean it. Clean it. I can see the smears. I can see the stains. It is filth. I don't want that. Like, I don't want to have. Oh, another thing. If you have dirty laundry in your basket, I don't want to see it. Like, put the lid on the laundry basket or
You're
water it.
demanding an awful
I
lot.
yeah, I don't know if I need all of that, but like I was thinking about some of the best quality videos that I, have seen over the years. Like I remember this was, I believe, a heterosexual couple, but she did not appear in the videos. It was all focused on her male partner. And he wasn't that fat. Like he was probably around my size, maybe even a little bit smaller. And the videos consisted of him sitting down and eating a lot of food, unbuttoning his pants, taking his shirt off, letting his belly hang out. But I loved the attention to detail with camera angles because clearly she was getting up in between his legs. She was shooting from like a lower angle so that you could see his belly filling the whole screen. And she lingered there and she really brought a lot of attention to like, this is what I want you to focus on. Like, that was great because I feel like the majority of people who produce content of their own, and I'm one of them too, who will just set the static or who will set the camera to be static and just record what's happening directly in front of it, like
Yeah.
I want to see those angles. I want to see from the top view, the bottom view, the side view. Like that's all the stuff that when my cock is in hand, it helps a lot. Like
Mm.
I want to see more of that.
You know what that makes me think of? The voyeur scenes in Hard Fat.
Yeah.
That's what that makes me think of. It's like the peering behind, the clothes. Like, because, bitch, if we don't all do this, when you see a beautiful chubba bubba at the shops, you're not stalking them, but you keep an eye on them. And like, you know that you get a little glance, you know that you are keeping an eye, and you are just hoping to dear God that they need something from the bottom shelf because you want to see them bend forward and have that overhang. You want to see them, oh, they've dropped something straight ahead, so you get that beautiful rump shot. You just want to see all of it.
You're hoping that the shirt will ride up a little bit so you get the peak of the belly from under the hem.
You want the whole turkey. That's what you want with all the trimmings. At least that's what I want. But yeah, I do want to ask, Chromie, what advice do you have for anyone who is considering stepping into the world of sex work?
I think my number one biggest piece of advice is to protect yourself. Doxing is such a I don't know if it's a problem in the gaming community, but in the fetishism community, it is a massive problem. I don't know if there's been anything big that's happened recently, but I have seen so many models disappear because, you know, they've lost their jobs or their family has found out, or, you know, their life has been destroyed. So just be incredibly careful. Create, you know, a second email for everything, that nothing from your real life is tied to. Don't use your real name for anything. Just very basic things. Even if you don't hide, like I go the whole way and I hide my face and everything. I don't know if that's really necessary. But just don't, be careful. Don't tell people where you live. Don't tell people your real name. Like, just be really, really careful, because people are crazy and people can do really bad things to you. And unfortunately, this is blackmail information. And you just have to be really, really cautious about that. Be careful with anyone who you're being a partner with, you know, any boyfriends, girlfriends. Just be careful.
100%. You know, listeners, and we've kind of talked about this a bit before. Anytime we do a Zoom, well, because we record over Zoom, you know, usually everyone's got their cameras on, and so we can have that kind of like banter and chat and everything. Anytime Chromie's appeared on the podcast, it's a blank screen. And we were clear from the beginning that that's totally fine, because that's what Chromie needs to do for herself to feel safe and protected. Even with us and all the precautions we take to make sure that nothing gets sent to anywhere that it doesn't need to go, that everything is edited down and that everything is kept appropriate, and that there's email tracks and all those appropriate things are done to make sure that everyone's protected. That's still something that Chromie does to protect herself, and we support it 100%, because that is your human right to do. And in all honesty, it's important. It's important to consider the people that are out there and looking at what's happening to other people. If there is a big example of people stealing content and things like that, ask yourself the question, are you genuinely okay with the concept of your personal, private, nude content being stolen by people? Because it happens constantly. These are big things. They are not small things.
And that's also something that I wish more people knew about, is that there are options. Obviously, none of them are foolproof, but there are options out there on the internet to where you have a much lower chance of your content being stolen. Obviously, as your popularity increases, the chances that some tech savvy person is going to figure out how to rip your content. But like all of my videos are streaming only on ManyVids, and I think I've come across literally one instance, and I've been doing this for like 5 years, of a paid video being found somewhere online. And like, I'm not one of the biggest names, but I mean, I've been around for a minute and I've really never had a problem with it. So there are ways you have to sort of sacrifice, like clips for sales. You have to be able to download everything. But if that is something that you really, really don't want, there are ways to kind of circumnavigate that.
Well, there you go. And what was the name of that website again? ManyVids? ManyVids. Okay. Well, listeners, check out Chromie on ManyVids, but also, if you're considering producing video content, maybe consider ManyVids. You know, look into different platforms. It's not all about Patreon and OnlyFans. Just for Fans I was with for quite a long time. They're fabulous. They are a platform created and run by sex workers, actually. And so they know what's up. They also have charity donations for sex work specific organizations. They have a 24/7 assist team based all around the world. So there are places you can check out. Don't just go where everyone else is going because it's easy. Like, take the time to consider what's going to work best for you, protect you, and you get out of it what you want to get out of it. So we'll say that. Chromie, do you think there's anything that we haven't touched on with the subject?
Nothing specifically. I guess maybe I can touch a little bit on like a little bit more on what I said before about things that people should know.
Yeah,
it's a decision that you should think about. I think a lot of people sort of jump into it. It's a decision, it's something that you should think about because it does have sort of implications on like your larger life. And you know, most people don't want to be like the president or something fancy, but even something not quite as fancy, you might have, it's just something that is there forever. The internet is forever, and maybe I'm a 90s kid who was preached to this too much, but I still think that it holds a lot of that adage holds a lot of truth.
Sorry, listeners, another
Again with the Oreos.
Just always shoving cookies in your mouth.
Chromie, baby, I just got to catch up to your waist size, you know? So it's not going to happen if I don't cram the Oreos in. Chromie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the pod.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you guys.
I'm glad. Where can listeners find you online?
You can find me on Tumblr at jigglybellysoftheart, on Twitter at jigglybellygirl, and on Instagram at jigglybellysoftheart3, and on many beds if you want to give me money.
There you go. I was about to ask if we want to talk about, since we're talking sex, where we were finding on many vids. But that's a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and beefyfrat at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and beefyfrat at thiccymouse. You can also look us up on TikTok at Thicc Radio or at our website at www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note, you can reach us at anchor.fm/Thicc Radio/message. And if you have any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stannnum and Thiccy Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Body by Chromie.